You know, there is a very specific, very dangerous sound that happens inside a calm man's head right before he decides to do something completely irrational. It's not a snap. It's not a bang. It's more like a quiet, heavy click, like a safety being switched off. For me, that click happened on a Tuesday evening, staring at the back bumper of a white crossover utility vehicle that was parked, with absolute, unbothered arrogance, directly in the middle of my driveway. I'm an engineer. My name is Mark. I work in software. I deal in logic. I deal in systems where if A happens, B must follow. I'm the guy who obeys the speed limit. I'm the guy who returns the shopping cart to the corral every single time. I bought this house in a quiet suburb outside of Atlanta because I wanted peace. I wanted a garage to tinker in, a lawn to mow, and a driveway that belonged to me. But then there was Brenda. Brenda lives next door. She is the vice president of our homeowners association, a title she wears like a crown of thorns she uses to bludgeon the rest of the neighborhood. She's the kind of woman who measures your grass with a ruler and has the local towing company on speed dial. Unless, of course, the rules apply to her. It started slowly, like a leak you don't notice until the ceiling caves in. At first, it was just a tire nudging over the property line. Then, it was her back bumper hanging over my side of the driveway apron. Annoying? Sure. Worth starting a neighborhood war over? I didn't think so. I'm a live and let live kind of guy. I figured, hey, we're neighbors. We share a property line. A little bleed over happens. But then came that Tuesday. I had just survived a brutal commute. 90 minutes of stop-and-go traffic that makes you question every life choice that led you to a cubicle. All I wanted, the only thing in the world I wanted, was to pull into my garage, shut the door, and sit in the dark for 5 minutes. I turned onto my street, hit the remote for the garage door, and stopped. I couldn't get in, because Brenda's gleaming white SUV wasn't just over the line. It was parked squarely, unapologetically, entirely in my driveway. Not blocking the sidewalk. Not blocking the street. Blocking me. I sat there in my sedan, blinker ticking uselessly, just staring. I thought, maybe she's confused? Maybe she's having a stroke? But no. The driver's door opened, and out popped Brenda. She was humming. She was actually humming. She popped the trunk and started hauling out reusable bags filled with organic kale and artisanal cheese, completely oblivious, or more likely, completely indifferent, to the fact that I was idling 10 feet behind her. I gave a little polite honk. Just a beep beep. The international symbol for, hey, I'm here. Brenda glanced over her shoulder, saw me, gave a vague, dismissive wave like she was shooing a fly, and went back to her groceries. Okay, deep breaths, Mark. I put the car in park, got out, and walked over. Brenda. She spun around, balancing a bag of quinoa on her hip, flashing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Oh, hi, Mark. Just grabbing the groceries. Crazy day at Whole Foods. You wouldn't believe the line. Yeah, I bet, I said, trying to keep the razor edge out of my voice. The thing is, Brenda, you're kind of in my driveway. She looked at her car. Then she looked at my driveway. Then she looked back at me with this expression of feigned surprise that was so bad it wouldn't have made the cut in a high school play. Oh, am I? She chirped. Whoops. Silly me. The street was just so cluttered today. I'll be done in a sec. And then she turned around and walked into her house. She left the car there. I stood on my own asphalt, feeling the heat radiate off the engine block of her car, and I realized I had two choices. I could scream, which would make me the crazy neighbor, or I could wait. So I waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. 15. Finally, after I had resorted to parking my car halfway down the block and lugging my laptop bag back up the hill like a nomad in my own neighborhood, she emerged. She hopped in her SUV, gave me another cheerful little wave, and backed out. No apology. No, my bad. Just entitlement so thick you could cut it with a knife. That was the beginning. I tried to be the good guy. A few days later, I caught her by the recycling bins. I put on my best diplomatic face. Morning, Brenda, I said. Hey, listen. About the other day, could I ask you to please try not to park in my driveway? It really blocks my access, and sometimes I need to get in or out quickly for work. She stopped what she was doing, put her hands on her hips, and looked at me like I had just asked her to donate a kidney. Are you serious, Mark? Yeah, I said, taken aback by the sudden shift in her tone. It's my property. Oh, relax, she scoffed, waving a hand. It's only ever for a few minutes when I'm unloading things, or when the street parking is full. It's not hurting anything. Why do you have to make such a big deal out of everything? You engineers are so rigid. It's not about being rigid, I countered, feeling the heat rise in my neck. It's inconvenient. And it's mine. Well, it's inconvenient when there's no parking on the street, she shot back. Honestly, Mark, some people are so territorial. It's just a patch of concrete. We're supposed to be a community. And then she marched back inside. Territorial. She called me territorial for wanting to use the driveway I pay a mortgage on. After that conversation, the gloves came off. It wasn't just occasional anymore. It became a power play. She would block me in when I was already home. She would leave her car there for hours while she had book club, which mostly involved drinking wine and complaining about the neighbors. It was like she was daring me to do something. I tried everything. I left a polite note on her windshield. I found it crumpled in my rose bushes the next day. I bought a tasteful metal sign that said private driveway, no parking, and planted it right next to the concrete. She parked so close to it her bumper almost touched the post. I tried parking my own car at the very end of the driveway to block her out. I came home one day to find she had parked directly behind me, blocking me in from the street side. I had to honk for 5 minutes to get her to move, and she came out looking like I was the one ruining her day. I called my buddy Dave. Dave is a fellow programmer, but unlike me, Dave has a darkness in him. He's cynical, he's petty, and he's brilliant. Dude. I raged into the phone, pacing my living room. She parked me in again, right behind my car. I'm going to lose it. Tow her, Dave said. His voice was flat, calm. Call a tow truck. Private property impound. Hit her where it hurts, the wallet. I stopped pacing. I looked out the window at her white SUV, sitting there like a conqueror. I thought about it. But if I tow her, it's war. She's the VP of the HOA. She'll find a way to fine me for the color of my curtains or the length of my grass. Towing feels messy. It feels like I'm outsourcing the problem. So what? Dave asked. You gonna let her walk all over you? No, I said, and that's when the click happened. That quiet, heavy click in my brain. No, I need a solution that speaks for itself. I need a system. I need something permanent. Oh, Dave said. I know that tone. Mark, do not build a moat. Do not install landmines. Not landmines, I muttered, staring at the tires of her SUV. But you're close. I need something pointy. That night, fueled by a mixture of cheap whiskey and pure, unadulterated frustration, I went down the internet rabbit hole. I searched driveway security, automated bollards, vehicle deterrence. The bollards were nice, those big steel posts that rise out of the ground, but they cost $10,000 and required major excavation. I didn't have that kind of budget. And then, on a grainy forum for industrial security enthusiasts, I saw it. A picture of a retractable spike strip. The kind they use at rental car lots to keep you from backing up, but motorized. It was insane. It was aggressive. It was definitely 100% illegal to install on a residential driveway, without about 1,000 permits I would never get. But the image of Brenda's smug face turning to horror as her precious tires hissed into oblivion. It was intoxicating. I sat there, the blue light of the monitor reflecting in my eyes, having a debate between the two wolves inside me. Responsible Mark was screaming that this was vandalism, that this was a lawsuit waiting to happen, that I could go to jail. But Fed Up Mark? Fed Up Mark was driving the bus. Fed Up Mark argued that she had been warned. She had been asked. She had chosen to violate my boundaries repeatedly. This wasn't an attack, it was a defense. Fed Up Mark won. The next few weeks became Project Puncture Proof. I stopped playing video games. I stopped watching Netflix. My garage became a workshop. I couldn't buy a pre-made system, obviously, so I had to build it. I needed 3 things: detection, activation, and the business end. For detection, I rigged up a discrete infrared beam sensor, the kind you use for garage doors, but mounted low, disguised inside a fake landscape rock. When a car broke the beam entering the driveway, it would send a signal. For activation, I needed power. I went to the electronics supply store. The clerk, a guy named Steve who looked like he'd seen everything, raised an eyebrow at my shopping list. I need a linear actuator, I told him. 12-volt, minimum 100-pound force, fast stroke speed. Okay, Steve said, typing it in. What's the application? I didn't blink. Automated garden tool deployment system. Steve looked at me. He looked at the actuator. Right, he said. Garden tools. Then came the spikes. I couldn't exactly buy tire shredders on Amazon, but I could buy replacement security spikes for industrial barriers. I ordered 2 dozen. When the customer service chat asked what they were for, I told them I was repairing a small security barrier for squirrels. The chat agent disconnected on me, but they shipped the order. Building it was the hardest part. I rented a concrete saw. You know, one of those massive, gas-powered beasts that screams like a banshee. On a Saturday morning, while Brenda was out at yoga, I cut a shallow channel across the entrance of my driveway, right inside the property line. I told the neighbors I was installing a new drainage system. I welded the spikes onto a steel channel hinged at the back. I mounted the linear actuator underneath in a waterproof box. When the sensor tripped, the actuator would fire, flipping the plate up 90 degrees. A row of 3-inch, hardened steel spikes would snap upright in about half a second. Dave came over to help me wire it. He looked at the jagged metal teeth sitting in the trench and shook his head. "Mark," he said, stripping a wire. "You realize that if the mailman drives over this, we are going to federal prison, right?" "It's calibrated," I lied. "It has a weight sensor loop. It only triggers for vehicles entering at speed." And I put it 5 feet back. The mailman stays on the curb. We tested it with a piece of cardboard. I tossed the box across the sensor line. Click. Thwack. The metal plate snapped up with a sound like a guillotine. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. I spent the rest of the weekend concealing it. I used asphalt patch to smooth over the trench, painting the top of the metal plate to match the driveway. Unless you were looking for it. Really looking for it. It just looked like a seam in the concrete. The trap was set. Now came the waiting. And let me tell you, the waiting was agony. The first few days were a masterclass in anxiety. Every time I heard a car engine, my stomach clenched. Was it too sensitive? What if a stray cat walked over it? What if a kid on a bike hit it? I spent hours staring out the window, twitching. But then I'd see Brenda's SUV parked down the street, and I'd remember her voice calling me territorial, and my resolve would harden like the concrete in that trench. I debated putting up a warning sign. Maybe something subtle like severe tire damage. But Brenda had ignored the no parking sign. She had ignored my verbal warnings. She had ignored the notes. A sign wouldn't stop her. The element of surprise was the only thing left. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. I was on a conference call, listening to my boss drone on about quarterly synergies, staring out my office window. The street was packed. It must have been street sweeping day or something, because the curbs were full. And then I saw it. The white whale. Brenda's crossover cruising slowly down the block. My heart leaped into my throat. I muted the call. She passed her own house. No spots. She passed the Miller's house. No spots. She slowed down as she approached my house. She saw the empty, inviting expanse of my driveway. I saw her check her mirrors. I saw her flick the turn signal. She wasn't even hesitating. Years of getting away with it had made her bold. She thought she owned the place. She swung the wheel, aiming the nose of that pristine white SUV directly at my property. I stood up from my desk. "Don't do it, Brenda," I whispered. "Don't do it." But she did. Her front bumper cleared the curb. Her front tires rolled smoothly over the invisible line. Click. I couldn't hear the relay from inside the house, but I felt it. Thwack. And then, a sound I will remember until my dying day. It wasn't a bang. It was a violent, rushing hiss, like a steam pipe bursting, followed immediately by a second one. PSSSHHHHHHHH. Brenda's SUV, which was rolling at maybe 5 miles an hour, lurched downward. It was visceral. The front end dropped 4 inches in a split second, slamming the rims onto the pavement with a sickening, metallic thud. She stopped dead. The car was listing forward, nose down, ass up. The row of gleaming steel spikes was clearly visible now, locked in the upright position, buried deep into the rubber of her front tires. Silence. For about 10 seconds, nothing happened. The world just paused. Brenda sat in the driver's seat, frozen. She probably thought she'd hit a sinkhole. Then, she tried to move. She hit the gas. Screech. The sound of aluminum rims grinding against asphalt is not pleasant. The car didn't move. It was anchored by the spikes. She killed the engine. The door flew open. Brenda stepped out, looking confused. She looked at the ground. She looked at her tires, which were now puddles of rubber. And then she saw the spikes. Her face, oh, her face. It went through a journey. Confusion. Disbelief. Horror. And finally, a shade of apoplectic rage that I thought only existed in cartoons. Miller! The shriek echoed through the neighborhood. It startled birds 3 blocks away. It wasn't a name. It was a primal scream of war. She stormed toward my front door. Neighbors were coming out now. Mrs. Gable across the street had her phone out recording. Of course she did. Brenda didn't knock. She pounded on my door with both fists. Bang, bang, bang. Open up. You maniac. You psychopath. I took a deep breath, checked my hair in the mirror, smoothed my shirt, and opened the door. I put on my best face of mild confusion. Brenda? I asked. What's all the shouting? Car trouble. She was vibrating. She was literally shaking with rage. She pointed a trembling finger at my face. Car trouble? You booby-trapped your driveway. You destroyed my tires. There are spikes, Mark. Actual spikes. Spikes. I stepped out onto the porch, peering past her at her crippled SUV. Good heavens. Are those tire deflation devices? Like they have at the airport? How on earth did those get there? Don't you lie to me. She screamed, spit flying. This was you. Because I parked in your precious driveway. You absolute lunatic. I'm calling the police. Brenda, I said, dropping the act just a little. My voice went cold. I seem to recall asking you, multiple times, not to park on my private property. I put up signs. I asked nicely. Some might call this predictable consequences. Predictable? You put spikes in the ground. That's illegal. That's terrorism. She whipped out her phone and dialed 911. I stood there, arms crossed, watching her melt down. I knew the cops were coming. I knew I was in trouble. But looking at that car, completely immobilized, finally defeated, it felt worth it. Officers Davies and Rodriguez arrived 10 minutes later. They got out of their cruiser, looked at the SUV, looked at the spikes, looked at the furious woman in yoga pants, and then looked at me. Officer Davies let out a long, slow sigh. Okay, he said. Talk to me. Slowly. Brenda launched into her tirade. Attempted murder. Destruction of property. She wanted me in cuffs. I stayed calm. Officers, after repeated warnings about trespassing were ignored, I installed a property protection device to deter unauthorized vehicles. It's on private property. Officer Rodriguez walked over to the trench. He kicked the mechanism. Sir, he said, turning to me. This looks like a commercial-grade spike strip. Installing something like this on a residential driveway without signage or permits is, well, it's highly illegal. It's reckless endangerment. She was trespassing, I said. That doesn't give you the right to set booby traps, Mr. Miller, Davies said sternly. We could cite you right now. Hell, we could arrest you. They took statements. They told Brenda she could press charges for the property damage. They told me I had to remove the device immediately or face criminal charges for maintaining a hazard. They called a tow truck for Brenda. I had to go into the garage, disable the actuator, and pry the mechanism out of the ground with a crowbar while the whole neighborhood watched. It was humiliating. It left a jagged, ugly trench in my driveway. The aftermath was messy. Brenda sued me, of course. She wanted new tires, new rims, an alignment, and damages for emotional distress. My lawyer, who I had to hire very quickly, told me I didn't have a leg to stand on. Booby traps are illegal, full stop. You can't hurt people or property just because they're on your land. I settled. I paid for her tires. I paid for her rims. I paid her towing fees. All in all, it cost me about $3,000, plus my own lawyer fees. The neighborhood buzzed for weeks. I was officially the spike strip guy. People gave me a wide berth. Mr. Henderson down the street gave me a slow nod one morning that I think was respect, but might have been fear. So where are we now? The trench is filled with concrete that doesn't quite match the rest of the driveway. My savings account is lighter. Brenda and I don't speak. If we see each other, we look at the sky. But here is the thing. Here is the twist that makes it all okay. Brenda has not parked in my driveway since the day of the puncturing. Not once. Not for a minute. Not for a second. She doesn't even use my driveway to turn around. She parks down the street. She parks blocks away if she has to. She is terrified of my concrete. Was it worth it? The stress? The money? The police record? Responsible Mark says absolutely not. It was stupid and dangerous. But fed up Mark? Standing here in my living room, looking out at my empty, accessible, glorious driveway? Yeah, it was kind of worth it. Sometimes, you can't reason with entitlement. Sometimes, you just have to make a point that's sharp enough to pierce through the ego. Just Maybe budget for the lawsuit beforehand. So, tell me in the comments, what's the most extreme thing you've ever done to protect your parking spot? Would you have gone as far as I did? Or am I just the neighborhood villain now? Let me know. And hey, if you want to see more stories of petty revenge gone too far, hit that subscribe button. Just watch where you park.